The cantina on Nexus Prime was always dark, but tonight it felt darker than usual. Purple smoke drifted between the tables where aliens from dozens of worlds sat drinking and talking in hushed voices. The air smelled of strange chemicals and burnt metal. The far corner away from the crowd sat a figure that most people tried not to look at. Commander Zakth had once been a proud warrior of the Kethri Empire. His purple shell had gleamed like polished stone, and his 4 arms had moved with deadly grace. Now 2 of those arms were metal replacements that clicked when he moved them. Long scars ran across his face, and one of his large black eyes was clouded white. He sat alone at his table every night, drinking the same glowing blue liquid that helped him forget. Tonight was different, though. A young reporter named Veltar had found him. Veltar was nervous. Everyone could see it in the way his green skin kept changing color and how his tentacles twitched. He worked for the Galactic Union News Service, and he wanted to write about the war that no one talked about anymore. It's the war with the humans, Commander Zach Veltar said as he sat down across from the scarred veteran. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Zakth did not look up from his drink. The blue liquid cast strange shadows on his damaged face. I have not agreed to anything yet, reporter. Said you wanted to ask about the war. Which war? The galaxy has seen many wars. The human war, Veltar said quietly. Back the conflict. 3 cycles ago with the species called humans. I want to write about what really happened. The cantina seemed to get quieter. At nearby tables, other aliens stopped talking and looked away. 6-armed bartender dropped a glass. The sound of it breaking was very loud in the sudden silence. Zach finally looked up, his good eye fixed on the young reporter. You want to know about the humans? Why? Because no one will talk about it, Veltar said. The Galactic Council sealed all the records. Military reports are classified. Veterans refuse interviews. Even the peace treaty is secret. It is like the war never happened, but everyone knows it did. Maybe there is a reason no one talks about it, Zakth H said. He took a long drink from his glass. Maybe some things are better left buried. But people have a right to know. The public deserves the truth about what happened between our species and theirs. How bad could it really be? Zach laughed. But it was not a happy sound. It was the kind of laugh that made other people uncomfortable. Several aliens at nearby tables got up and moved to different seats. How bad could it be? Zakth H repeated. You think you want to know, young reporter? You think the truth will make a good story for your news service? You think you can handle whatever I might tell you? I do, Veltar said, though. His voice shook a little. Zach studied him for a long moment. Then he waved his metal hand, and the bartender brought another drink. Tell me, reporter, what do you know about war? I have studied military history. I know about the Kethri campaigns against the Zephyrians, the conflict with the Crystal Collective, standard warfare doctrine and tactics. Standard warfare, Zakth H said slowly. Yes, that is what we thought we knew too. Standard warfare has rules. Civilized species fight in certain ways. Armies fight armies. Military targets are attacked. Civilians are protected or evacuated. When one side becomes too weak to continue, they surrender. The victor takes territory or resources or makes political demands. That is how civilized species wage war. Veltar nodded. That is correct. The humans do not fight civilized wars, Zakth H said. What do you mean? Zakth H finished his drink and stared at the empty glass. 3 cycles ago, the Kethri Empire was strong. It had conquered 17 different species. Our fleets controlled 43 star systems. Our military doctrine had never failed. When we discovered the human colonies, they seemed weak, primitive. They had only been in space for a few hundred of their years. Their technology was inferior. Their ships were smaller. Their weapons were less advanced. So you attacked them. Sent a diplomatic message first. Standard procedure. We told them they could surrender and become part of the Empire, or they could fight and be destroyed. Every other species had chosen surrender after seeing our strength, but the humans refused. They did not even respond to our diplomatic message. When our fleet arrived at their first colony world, we expected them to see our ships and immediately surrender. Instead, they sent us a message that was only 3 words long. What did it say? Zact H looked directly at Veltar. "Come and take it." The reporter blinked. "That was their response to your entire fleet?" "That was their response. So we decided to show them what resistance would cost. We destroyed one of their orbital stations with a single shot from our main weapon. It was just a demonstration. To show them our power. To make them understand that fighting was useless." "And then they surrendered?" "No," Zack said quietly. "Then they declared war." Veltar leaned forward. "One destroyed station, and they declared war against your entire empire? Not just war, total war. No negotiations, no terms, no possibility of surrender. They said they would fight until either every human was dead or every Kethri was dead. Nothing else was acceptable." The reporter stared at him. "That seems like suicide." "That is what we thought too. How could one small species fight the entire Kethri Empire?" It made no sense. We had more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. We had conquered 17 other species. What could these humans possibly do? Zact H raised his metal hand and looked at the artificial fingers. "I commanded a ground assault unit. It's 3,000 of the best Kethri warriors. We had fought on a dozen worlds and never lost a battle. I was confident we would take the human colony in a few days. What happened? We learned that humans do not fight the way other species fight. They do not follow the rules of civilized warfare. They do not protect their civilians. They do not have separate military and civilian populations." Veltar frowned. "I do not understand. When we landed on their world, we expected to fight their army, while their civilians hid in safe places. Instead, everyone fought. Old humans, young humans, male humans, female humans, humans who were supposed to be farmers or teachers or shopkeepers. All of them had weapons. All of them fought like trained soldiers. All of them? Every single one. We captured a human settlement and found weapons hidden in schools and hospitals and places where children lived. We found explosives disguised as medical supplies. We found humans who looked like civilians but fought like elite warriors." Zact H paused and looked around the cantina. Other aliens were still avoiding their table, as if the conversation itself was dangerous. "The worst part was not their fighting skill," he continued. "It was their attitude. Other species fight to win territory or resources or political goals. If they start losing badly, they surrender to save lives. Humans fought like every battle was the last battle their species would ever fight. They fought like losing was not possible because losing meant extinction. And this worried you? This terrified us. We had never faced an enemy that treated every conflict as a fight for survival. We did not know how to deal with soldiers who would rather die than retreat. We did not know how to negotiate with people who refused to consider surrender." Veltar was quiet for a moment. "What happened to your unit?" Zact H said, "is a story for tomorrow. If you still want to hear it after thinking about what I have told you tonight." The commander stood up slowly, his metal limbs clicking. "Go back to your room, young reporter. Think carefully about whether you really want to know the rest. Some knowledge cannot be unknown once you learn it." As Zack walked away, Veltar sat alone at the table. Around him, the cantina slowly returned to normal, but he noticed that no one came to sit at the tables near him. It was as if the very conversation about humans had made the space around him dangerous. He looked down at his recording device and wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. The next evening, Veltar returned to the cantina. He had spent the entire day thinking about Zacta's words. The more he thought about them, the more questions he had. He found the commander sitting at the same table, drinking the same blue liquid. This time Zact H did not seem surprised to see him. "He came back," Zack said without looking up. "I need to know the rest," Veltar replied as he sat down. "What happened to your unit on the human world?" Zact H was quiet for a long time. His metal fingers tapped against the table, making small clicking sounds. "You said you studied military history. Tell me, what happens when an army lands on a planet to conquer it?" "Standard procedure is to secure landing zones, establish supply lines, and advance toward military targets while avoiding civilian areas," Veltar answered. "Exactly. That is what civilized species do. That is what we tried to do on New Dakota, the human colony world. Zack took a drink. The humans had other ideas. What do you mean? When we landed, we sent scout units to locate their military bases and weapon factories. We expected to find clear targets to attack. Instead, we found that their entire civilization was designed for war. Every building could be a fortress. Every vehicle could be a weapon. Every person could be a soldier. Veltar leaned forward. Surely that is an exaggeration. Is it? Zack's scarred face showed no emotion. Let me tell you about the first human we captured. Her name was Lisa Powell. Our records said she was a medical officer, a healer, someone who helped wounded. Soldiers? That sounds normal? We thought so too. When we found her treating wounded humans in what looked like a medical center, we assumed she would surrender. Medical personnel from other species always surrender. They're protected by galactic law. They help wounded soldiers from both sides. But she did not surrender. She raised her hands like she was giving up. 2 of my soldiers approached to take her prisoner. When they got close enough, she pulled out a weapon and killed them both. Then she continued treating the wounded humans like nothing had happened. Veltar stared at him. She killed soldiers who thought she was surrendering. That was just the beginning. Captured her an hour later. During questioning, she explained her actions. She said that in human warfare, showing mercy to enemies was a luxury her people could not afford. She said every Kethri soldier who lived would kill more humans later. So letting any of us live was the same as murdering her own people. That seems very harsh. Harsh? Zack laughed his bitter laugh again. That was the most reasonable human we met. At least she explained her thinking. Others did not bother. The commander paused to order another drink. Veltar noticed that his hands were shaking slightly. Tell me about the others, the reporter said. There was a human settlement called Pine Ridge. About 5,000 people lived there. When we surrounded it, we expected them to surrender or evacuate. Instead, they sent us a message saying they were ready to negotiate. That sounds more reasonable. We thought so too. We sent a diplomatic team to meet with their leaders. Humans invited our negotiators into their largest building for talks. 20 of our best officers went inside. Veltar waited, but Zack H seemed lost in memory. What happened to them? The reporter finally asked. The entire building exploded. All 20 officers died instantly. The humans had rigged their own meeting hall with enough explosives to destroy a small ship. They killed their own negotiators. Along with ours, their own people died too. Yes. That was when we began to understand. The humans were not just willing to die fighting us. They were willing to sacrifice their own people if it meant killing more of us. Every trade had to favor them, even if it cost human lives. Veltar felt sick. Why would they do such a thing? Because they did not see individual battles or individual lives. They saw only the final result. If trading 10 human lives could kill 20 Kethri, they considered it a victory. Destroying their own building could eliminate our command. Structure, the cost was acceptable. This cannot be normal behavior. It got worse, much worse. Zack's voice became quieter. After Pine Ridge, we changed our tactics. No more negotiations. No more attempts to capture settlements intact. We decided to simply destroy everything and kill everyone. That seems like the logical response. That is what we thought. We began bombing human cities from orbit. We destroyed their farms, their factories, their power plants. We used weapons that would make their land unusable for generations. We thought we were teaching them the cost of resistance. And we learned that destroying human cities only made the survivors more dangerous. The humans who lived through our bombardments did not surrender. They did not flee to other worlds. They went underground and kept fighting. Zack H stood up and walked to the cantina's small window. Outside, the lights of Nexus Prime glittered. In the darkness of space, I remember the day we thought we had one, he said with his back to Veltar. We had destroyed every human city on New Dakota. Our sensors showed no large groups of humans anywhere on the planet. No organized military units. No communication signals. The world looked empty, so the humans had finally been defeated. No. They had just changed tactics. A week later, my supply convoy disappeared. 30 vehicles, 600 soldiers gone. Without a trace, we found the wreckage days later, scattered across 50 kilometers of forest. Something had hunted down and destroyed each vehicle separately. What could do that? Humans. Small groups of them, moving through terrain they knew better than we did. They had studied our patrol routes, our communication frequencies, our vehicle weaknesses. While we thought we were winning the war, they were learning everything about us. Sacked H returned to his seat. The attacks got more sophisticated. Humans would capture our soldiers and take their equipment. Then they would use our own weapons against us. They copied our communication codes and sent false orders that led entire units into traps. How many soldiers did you lose? By the end of the first month on New Dakota, my unit had lost half its strength. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was how they used our dead. Veltar did not want to ask, but he had to know. What do you mean? When humans died in battle, their bodies remained dangerous. They rigged their own dead with explosives. When our medics tried to treat wounded Kethri soldiers who were lying near human bodies, the corpses would explode. They weaponized their own dead. Everything was a weapon to them. Their buildings, their vehicles, their wounded, their dead. We found human children's toys that were actually bombs. We found medical supplies that released poison gas when opened. We found food that would kill anyone who ate it. Zach Tate finished his drink and stared at the empty glass. After 2 months. On New Dakota, I received new orders. Command was sending reinforcements. 3 more assault units like mine. I was told that the humans were more dangerous than expected, but that overwhelming force would solve the problem. Did it? That Zach said quietly is when we learned that humans do not just fight harder when they are losing. They fight differently. They stopped pretending to follow any rules at all. The commander stood up again. Tomorrow, if you still want to hear it, I will tell you about the day we realized we were not fighting a war anymore. We were fighting for the survival of our entire species. As Zach walked away, Veltar sat alone with his thoughts. Around him, the cantina continued its normal business, but he felt like he was sitting in a bubble of dangerous knowledge. Aliens still avoided his table, as if they could sense the terrible stories being told there. He looked at his recording device and wondered if some truths were too dangerous to share with the galaxy. On the 3rd night, Veltar arrived at the cantina early. He had barely slept since hearing Zach's previous stories. Images of weaponized corpses and exploding children's toys haunted his dreams. When the commander arrived, he looked even more tired than usual. You look like you have not been sleeping, Zach observed as he sat down. Your stories are difficult to forget, Veltar admitted. I keep thinking about what you said, about fighting for species survival. Good. Maybe that means you are beginning to understand. Zach Tate ordered his usual drink. Tell me, reporter, what do you know about biological warfare? The question made Veltar uncomfortable. It is banned by galactic law. The use of diseases or poisons as weapons is considered a crime against all life. Yes, every civilized species agrees to these laws. We all signed the treaties. We all promised never to use such weapons. Zach's metal fingers drummed against the table. The humans never signed those treaties. It's because they were not part of galactic civilization yet, because they said the treaties were stupid. Veltar stared at him. He refused to ban biological weapons. They said that banning any weapon during a war for survival was like asking someone to fight with one hand tied behind their back. They said if another species wanted to destroy humanity, then humanity would use every possible weapon to survive. Seems very extreme. We thought so too. That is why my commanders decided to teach them a lesson about civilized warfare. We began using chemical weapons against human positions. Nothing deadly, just gases that would make them sick and force them to surrender. And what happened? Zach H. was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. They thanked us. Thanked you. They sent us a message saying thank you for showing them that biological warfare was acceptable. In our conflict, then they began using biological weapons against us. Veltar felt his skin changing color with fear. What kind of biological weapons? At first, simple things. Diseases that made our soldiers sick. It's poisons that contaminated our food and water supplies. We thought we could handle it. Our medical teams were prepared for such attacks. But human biological weapons were not designed just to make us sick. They were designed to cause maximum terror and suffering. They created diseases that attacked our nervous systems and made us lose control of our bodies. They made viruses that caused horrible pain but took weeks to kill us. Viltar wanted to stop listening, but he forced himself to continue. This was the truth he had come looking for. The worst part was that they seemed to enjoy creating new weapons. Every week, we faced something different, something worse. It was like they were conducting experiments on us to see what would cause the most suffering. How could they develop so many different weapons so quickly? Because they were not just developing them during the war. We learned later that humans had been preparing for biological warfare for thousands of their years. They had entire libraries of information about diseases and poisons. They had laboratories dedicated to creating weapons we had never imagined. Zack paused to drink. His hands were shaking more than usual. 3 months into the war, my commanders made a terrible decision. They decided that if humans wanted to use banned weapons, then we would show them what real biological warfare looked like. We had our own secret weapons, diseases that could kill entire populations, viruses that could make planets uninhabitable. You used them? We used them? We dropped biological weapons on 3 human colony worlds. Millions of humans died within days. We thought this would finally make them surrender. We thought showing them our true power would end their resistance. Did it work? Zack laughed, but it was the most horrible sound Veltar had ever heard. Oh, it worked, just not the way we expected. What do you mean? The humans did surrender on those 3 worlds, but not to save lives. They surrendered because all the humans there were already dying from our weapons. They surrendered so they could use their remaining time to do something else. What? They used their dying people as weapons. Humans who were infected with our diseases volunteered to be loaded into small ships and crashed into our space stations. They turned their own plague victims into biological missiles. Veltar felt sick. They weaponized their own dying people. That was just the beginning. Within a week of our biological attack, we started receiving reports from our homeworld. Strange new disease had appeared in our major cities. It spread quickly and killed efficiently. Our medical teams had never seen anything like it. Humans had attacked your homeworld. Not just attacked it, they had been preparing to attack it for months. While we thought we were fighting a war on their colony worlds, human agents had already infiltrated our home system. They had been waiting for us to use biological weapons so they could respond with their own. Zack Tate stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, a transport ship was docking at the station. Normal life continued while he told his terrible story. The disease they used on our homeworld was specially designed to kill Kethri. It only affected our species. Other aliens living on our world were completely safe. The humans had somehow created a weapon that targeted our specific biology. How many died? 50 million in the first month. Disease spread through our population centers like fire through dry grass. Our government tried to quarantine infected areas, but it was too late. The humans had made sure their weapon would spread before anyone could stop it. Did your military leaders surrender then? No, they became angry. They decided that if humans wanted a biological war, they would get one. We began developing new weapons specifically to destroy human biology. We started experimenting on human prisoners to learn how to kill them more efficiently. Veltar did not want to hear more, but he had to ask, what happened next? That was when we learned the most terrible truth about humans. They do not just fight wars, they study their enemies. Every battle, every prisoner we took, every piece of human technology we captured had been planned by them. They wanted us to study their biology. They wanted us to capture their people and experiment on them. Why would they want that? Because while we were learning how to kill humans, they were learning how to kill us. Every experiment we performed on them, they performed on us, but they had been doing it longer. They had been doing it better. And they had been doing it to other species for generations. Zack Daitch returned to his seat. His good eye was staring at something Veltar could not see. 6 months into the war, we received intelligence reports that changed everything. Human ships had been spotted near the homeworlds of our allied species. The humans were not just fighting us. They were preparing to fight our entire alliance. How could they attack so many worlds at once? Because they were not planning to attack them one by one. They were planning to attack them all at the same time. While we thought we were fighting a local war against a few human colonies, they had been preparing for a war against our entire civilization. What kind of preparations? They had mapped every world in our empire. They knew our population centers, our industrial facilities, our military bases. They had identified our genetic weaknesses, our food supplies, our communication networks. They had created specific weapons for each of our allied species. Veltar felt cold despite the warm air in the cantina. They were planning genocide. Not just genocide, complete extinction. They wanted to make sure that no Kethri or any of our allies would ever threaten humans again. They were preparing to end our species permanently. How did you find out about this? Because they told us. They sent a message to our high command with complete details of their plans. They showed us exactly how they intended to destroy every world we controlled. They gave us a timeline for when each attack would begin. Why would they reveal their plans? Because they wanted us to know what we were facing. They wanted us to understand that continuing the war meant the complete destruction of our civilization. They gave us one chance to surrender unconditionally. Zakdach finished his drink and stood up. Tomorrow, I will tell you what happened when our leaders had to choose between surrender and extinction. I will tell you why the war ended so suddenly, and why no one talks about it anymore. As the commander walked away, Veltar sat alone with the terrible knowledge he had gained. He understood now why the war records were sealed. He understood why veterans refused to speak about the conflict. Some truths were too dangerous to share, but he also knew he had to hear the rest of the story, no matter how horrible it might be. On the fourth night, the cantina seemed emptier than usual. Word had spread about the conversations taking place in the corner. Many regular customers had found other places to drink. Veltar sat alone at the table, waiting. When Zakdach arrived, he moved slowly, like an old man carrying a heavy burden. "This is the last time we will meet," Zak said as he sat down. "After tonight, I will have told you everything. After tonight, you will understand why some knowledge should stay buried." "I'm ready to hear it," Veltar said, though he was not sure he meant it. "Are you? Are you ready to learn why the most powerful military alliance in galactic history surrendered unconditionally to a species that had been in space for only a few hundred years?" Veltar nodded, not trusting his voice. Zakdach ordered his usual drink, but did not touch it when it arrived. The message from the humans contained more than just their plans for destroying our worlds. It contained a deadline. They gave us exactly 72 hours to surrender completely. It seems like a very short time to make such an important decision. It was meant to be short. They wanted our leaders to make the decision while they were afraid, not after they had time to think of alternatives. Zak's metal fingers tapped nervously on the table. The human message was delivered by Admiral Tony Mitchell, their fleet commander. Have you ever heard that name? No. Good. Most people have not. The humans made sure of that. Admiral Mitchell was not just a military commander, it was something much worse. He was a human who specialized in ending wars permanently. What does that mean? It means he did not fight wars to win territory or resources or political advantage. He fought wars to make sure the enemy could never fight again. Ever. Veltar leaned forward. How do you make an entire species unable to fight? You destroy their ability to exist as a civilization. You take away their population, their technology, their planets, their food supplies, their genetic diversity. You make it impossible for them to recover, even over thousands of years. That sounds like complete genocide. Worse than genocide. Genocide kills everyone. What Admiral Mitchell planned would have killed everyone and made sure no one could ever replace them. He wanted to make our species extinct and keep them extinct forever. Zakdach finally picked up his drink, but his hands shook so badly that blue liquid spilled on the table. The Admiral's message included detailed plans for every world in our empire. Not just military plans. It's complete biological, economic, and social destruction. He had identified every food crop our species depended on and created diseases to destroy them. He had mapped our breeding cycles and developed weapons to disrupt them. He had studied our industrial systems and knew exactly how to make our technology. Useless. How could they have learned so much about your civilization? Because they had been studying us since before the war began. While we thought we were discovering a new species to conquer, they had already been watching us for years. They knew more about our empire than our own leaders did. That seems impossible. Does it? Think about how the war progressed. Every time we tried a new tactic, the humans were ready for it. Every time we thought we had surprised them, they turned our own moves against us. They were not reacting to our strategies. They were leading us to use the strategies they wanted us to. Veltar thought about everything Zack had told him over the past 3 nights. You mean the entire war was planned by the humans? Not just planned, controlled. They wanted us to attack them. They wanted us to use biological weapons. They wanted us to involve our allied species. Every escalation in the war brought them closer to their real goal, which was to demonstrate to the entire galaxy what happens when someone tries to destroy humanity. The war was not about defending their colonies. It was about sending a message to every species in known space. Zack stood up and walked to the window. A human transport ship was approaching the station, and Veltar could see him tense as he watched it. Do you see that ship? Zack asked. Human design, human crew. They come to this station every week now, bringing trade goods and diplomatic messages. Everyone treats them politely. Everyone is friendly and cooperative. That sounds like normal, peaceful relations. Look closer at how the other species behave around them. Watch how conversations stop when humans enter a room. Notice how no one ever argues with human requests. See how quickly other species agree to anything humans suggest. Veltar looked around the cantina. Now that Zack had pointed it out, he could see it. Other aliens avoided even looking toward the window where the human ship was docking. They are afraid, Veltar realized. They are terrified. Because they all know what I am about to tell you. The war did not end because we surrendered. The war ended because we learned what humans do to species that threaten them. What happened in those final 72 hours? Zack returned to his seat. Our high command spent the first day arguing. Some wanted to fight. They said no species could really destroy an entire galactic empire. They said the human threats were impossible to carry out. What changed their minds? Admiral Mitchell sent them a demonstration. One of our smaller colony worlds, a planet called Cathrone with about 2 million people, simply went silent. No communication signals, no ship traffic, no energy readings. As if the entire world had just stopped existing. What had the humans done to it? Nothing dramatic, nothing violent. They had released a biological agent that made every living thing on the planet fall asleep and never wake up. 2 million Kethri died peacefully in their beds, at their workstations, in their vehicles. The planet looked completely normal from space. Everyone was just dead. Veltar felt sick. They killed an entire world as a demonstration. They killed an entire world to show us they could do it quietly, efficiently, and without damaging anything they might want to use later. The planet's cities were intact. The factories still worked. The infrastructure was undamaged. Only the people were gone. And your leaders surrendered after seeing this? Not immediately. Some still wanted to fight. So Admiral Mitchell sent a second demonstration. This time he chose one of our allied worlds, a planet belonging to our friends, the Velkari. 5 million people died in their sleep overnight. He attacked your allies to make a point. It was showing us that continuing the war would not just destroy the Kethri. It would destroy everyone who had ever supported us. Every species in our alliance. Every world that had traded with us. Every civilization that had been friendly to our empire. Zack picked up his glass, but did not drink. The final message from Admiral Mitchell was very simple. He said the humans had prepared similar weapons for every inhabited world in our sphere of influence. Over 300 planets, more than 50 billion people, all of them could be eliminated, quietly and efficiently within a single day. 50 billion people, he gave us a choice. Surrender unconditionally and immediately, or watch as humanity eliminated every trace of our civilization from the galaxy. Not just our military, not just our government, everyone who had ever been part of our empire or supported it in any way. What did your leaders choose? They chose survival, complete unconditional surrender. No negotiations, no terms, no conditions. They agreed to everything the humans demanded. What did the humans demand? Almost nothing. That was the most terrifying part. They did not want our territory. They did not want our resources. They did not want to rule us or enslave us. They wanted only one thing, which was they wanted us to promise that no Kethri and no species allied with the Kethri would ever again engage in aggressive warfare against any other species, anywhere, ever. Beltar stared at him. That was their only demand. That was their only demand. In exchange, they would allow our species to continue existing. They would not attack our worlds or harm our people. They would even provide medical aid to help us recover from the biological weapons we had used on each other. That seems almost generous. Does it? Think about what they really accomplished. They did not conquer our empire. Just unnecessary. They showed the entire galaxy what happens to species that threaten others. Now, every civilization in known space understands that starting a war might result in complete extinction. Zact H finally drank from his glass. Do you know why I agreed to tell you this story? No, because it is not really about the war between humans and the Kethri. It is about what humans are. They do not fight wars to win. They fight wars to make sure wars end. They do not seek to rule other species. They seek to make ruling unnecessary by making everyone too afraid to fight, making everyone understand the real cost of aggression. Before the war, species fought each other regularly. Small conflicts, territorial disputes, resource wars. Since the war ended, how many aggressive wars have been fought in this galaxy? Veltar thought about it. None that I know of. Exactly none. The humans ended warfare itself, not through diplomacy, or treaties, or mutual understanding. Through fear. Pure, absolute fear of what they will do to anyone who threatens others. Zact H stood up slowly. You wanted to know the truth about the war. Now you know. The humans did not defeat the Kethri Empire. They defeated the concept of conquest itself. They made the entire galaxy understand that in a universe containing humans, aggressive war leads to extinction. What will you do now?